Welcome to Roll Credits, where movie lovers get the trivia they didn't know they needed. This podcast was created with help from AI tools, so double-check any quotes before you drop trivia at your next movie night. Today, we're stepping into Blink Twice. Did you know the film originally had a completely different title before it was changed during production? That's just one clue that something isn't quite what it seems. So, imagine someone hands you a glass of vintage champagne.
Oh, right, like the ultimate luxury setup.
Exactly. The music is perfectly curated. The sun is setting over this stunning private island. You're surrounded by beautiful, wealthy people.
Sounds pretty ideal.
Right. But you have absolutely no idea that you are actually fighting for your life. Welcome to our deep dive for today. We are stepping into the incredibly deceptive, really unsettling world of Zoë Kravitz's directorial debut, Blink Twice.
Yeah, it is quite the ride.
It really is. And we have a massive stack of sources for you today. We're talking the original screenplay, behind-the-scenes production interviews, deep dive psychological reviews, casting notes, the works. Our mission here is to basically extract the absolute best insights from all of this.
Right, to figure out how a movie that looks like a glossy, glamorous vacation transforms into a masterclass in psychological terror.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. The setup is deceptively simple, but it preys on something I think a lot of us desire.
It really does. It plays heavily on that modern fantasy of sudden, unearned access.
Yeah.
We follow Frida, who is a cocktail waitress, played incredibly well by Naomi Ackie, and her friend Jess, played by Alia Shawkat.
Such a great duo.
Oh, totally. And through sheer hustle, they managed to catch the eye of this tech billionaire, Slater King.
Played by Channing Tatum, which we have to talk about that in a sec.
We definitely will. But, he invites them to this dream vacation on his private island. And for the first act of the film, it is absolute paradise, endless luxury.
Right. But there is this creeping sensation that things are turning deeply unsettling. It's like stepping into a perfectly curated, glossy Instagram influencer trip that slowly morphs into a true crime documentary.
That is the perfect way to describe it. And that tension is baked right into the physical location they used for the shoot.
Yeah, I was looking at the production notes on that. Visually, the movie sets you up to crave this lifestyle.
Right.
But the location itself is doing a lot of heavy lifting to create that underlying dread. They shot this in Mexico, right?
Right. Specifically, they used a place called the Hacienda Temazon Sur down in the Yucatan Peninsula.
Wow.
And the history of that specific location adds an entirely different layer to the narrative. It's actually a 17th century former Cecil plantation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was eventually converted into this luxury hotel surrounded by over 90 acres of dense greenery.
So it's incredibly isolated.
Completely. In the film, it serves as Slater's private compound. On the surface, it's visually stunning, but beneath that, its real-world history as a plantation subtly underscores the film's core themes.
Themes of, exploitation and hidden labor.
Exactly. Trapped bodies. It provides this grand, imposing backdrop where the characters are entirely cut off from the outside world. It's a beautiful prison.
And the person controlling that beautiful prison is Channing Tatum as Slater King. Now wait, I have to push back on this casting choice.
Let's hear it.
Channing Tatum is usually the lovable, charming goofball we all want to hang out with. Magic Mike, 21 Jump Street.
He's very approachable.
He is the human equivalent of a golden retriever. How does a director convince the audience to genuinely fear him?
Well, that subversion of our expectations was a very deliberate tactical choice by Kravitz. She needed an actor who inherently made the audience and the female characters in the story feel completely safe.
Oh, that's clever.
It is. She is actively weaponizing Tatum's natural charm and even his real-world reputation as this safe, supportive, quote-unquote feminist guy to completely disarm you.
Wow. Did he have reservations about playing someone so dark?
Actually, Tatum mentioned in interviews that this is the first time in his career he's played a character he had absolutely no connection to or empathy for.
Really?
Yeah. He point-blank described Slater King as a psychopath.
So it's about betraying the audience's trust just as much as the character's trust.
Precisely. Because he uses his typical leading man charm, the eventual reveal of his true nature becomes infinitely more terrifying. It's not a monster hiding in the shadows growling at you.
Right. It's a monster offering you a customized gift bag.
Exactly. Offering you a drink and a smile, making you feel special right up until the trap snaps shut.
We are talking about this perfectly crafted facade on screen, but behind the scenes, getting this movie to audiences involved a very similar masking of its true nature.
Oh, the title change.
Yes. I was digging into the production history, and this project started way back in 2017. And for a long time, it was not called Blink Twice.
What's fascinating here is how the evolution of the title reveals a lot about the cultural shifts over the last few years. The original working title Kravitz used was Pussy Island.
Which is quite the title.
It really is. She wrote the initial drafts pre-Me Too. It was born out of a very raw expression of anger and frustration regarding the treatment of women by powerful, untouchable men.
Especially in, like, the tech industry and Hollywood.
Exactly. The original title was meant to be fiercely provocative. It reflected an era where a group of wealthy men might actually find it acceptable or even funny to call a private island that.
But she ran into a massive wall with that original title, right?
She did. The Motion Picture Association didn't want to put it on posters or billboards.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and theater chains were hesitant to even print it on tickets. But here's the part that genuinely surprised me.
What's that?
The market research. The studios tested the title, and it turned out women were actively offended by it.
Wait, really? The target audience was offended?
Yeah, female audiences were telling pollsters they refused to see the movie because of the name alone. Kravitz initially wanted to use the title to reclaim the word, to take the power back from the very men she was critiquing. But the data showed her that society just wasn't there yet. The cultural context around that word was still too loaded, too alienating for the exact demographics she wanted to reach.
I mean, I understand the business side of it, but doesn't changing the title to appease market research totally dilute her original provocative vision? Especially for a first-time director trying to make a statement.
It's a completely fair critique, and honestly, a lot of independent filmmakers would argue she should have held her ground.
Right.
However, Kravitz recognized a harsh, pragmatic reality of filmmaking. A title is completely useless if the theater is empty.
That's a really good point.
Her core vision wasn't just to shock people with a title. Her vision was about communicating a vital message of female solidarity, survival, and the insidious nature of power abuses. To deliver that, she needed the audience to actually show up and sit in the seats. She chose the survival of the story over the purity of the title.
And the themes that story explores are incredibly heavy. Looking through the film critiques in our sources, it's clear this isn't just a fantasy thriller.
No, not at all.
Film critics have widely drawn parallels between the events on Slater's Island and real-world headlines. They note these chilling echoes of high-profile cases involving figures like Jeffrey Epstein, the allegations against Bill Cosby, or even the recent harrowing case in France of Dominique Pellico.
Yeah, where drugging was systematically used to strip away autonomy and memory.
Exactly. And just to be clear to you listening, we're simply reporting on what the sources and reviewers have pointed out here. We aren't taking any political sides, but it's undeniable that the movie takes these very dark, real-world dynamics of entitlement and power and puts them right under a microscope.
It does, and it explores those dynamics through the terrifying central concept of memory manipulation.
Oh, man.
The island basically operates on a system of forced forgetting. Slater King frequently repeats this mantra to his guests. He says, "Forgetting is a gift."
Here's where it gets really interesting. The mechanics of the movie are just packed with subtle visual clues that play with your perception as a viewer. It makes you feel just as disoriented as the characters.
It really does.
It's almost like, when you're doing an escape room, but nobody told you the timer started,
Oh, yeah.
and you don't even realize the random objects in the room are actually puzzle pieces until you only have 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
That's exactly what watching this feels like. Let's talk about the red flowers.
Yeah, the visual language is incredibly layered. Those red flowers are everywhere on the island. They're called desideria, which translates from Latin to nostalgia or desire.
Which sounds lovely, but...
Right. But they aren't just decorative landscaping. They're being harvested by the staff to create a custom perfume that is gifted to the women in these little red bags.
And that perfume is the literal mechanism for control.
Exactly.
Right.
When inhaled, it completely wipes the women's memories of the horrific abuse they suffer every single night. They wake up the next morning thinking they just had a great time at a party.
And because their memories are wiped, the audience's perspective is wiped too. We don't see it either. But Kravitz leaves these brilliant breadcrumbs. Like the lizard.
Oh, the opening shot.
Yes. In the very first shot of the film, we see a tight close-up of a lizard's eye. It seems like a random video Frida is scrolling past on her phone.
Just, standard social media filler.
Right. But much later, we realize it's actually a fragmented memory flash. Frida had been to the island the year before, tried to escape, fell, and hit her head on a rock.
Which explains the physical scar she has on her face throughout the entire movie.
Yes, and as she lay bleeding, she stared directly at that lizard.
That choice is a masterful simulation of trauma recovery. From a psychological standpoint, traumatic memories aren't usually stored in the brain as a cohesive, linear story.
They're more scattered, right?
Exactly. They're stored as fragmented sensory snapshots, a smell, a color, or in this case, a tight visual of a lizard. Kravitz is mimicking the confusing nature of how repressed memories fight their way back to the surface.
Another great example of this is the housekeeper, Mama. When she first meets Frida, she keeps repeating the phrase, "Red Rabbit."
Which, to the viewer and to Frida, sounds like complete nonsense.
Right, it sounds like something a character in a David Lynch movie would say, just to be weird. But it's actually a desperate warning.
It is.
Later on, when Frida finally drinks the local snake venom, which, wild twist, happens to act as the antidote to the memory-wiping flower perfume, her mind clears.
And she finds that photograph.
Yes, she finds an old Polaroid of herself on the island from the previous year. And in the photo, her fingernail art features these tiny, distinctive red rabbits.
It's so chilling.
Mama recognized her hands and was trying to trigger her suppressed memory the entire time.
Every detail is a clue hiding in plain sight. Even the wardrobe choices are loaded with intent.
Oh, the dresses.
Yeah. Early in the film, Frida and Jess are laying out their clothes, choosing between a red dress and a blue dress. Frida chooses the red dress.
Which is a very subtle visual nod to The Matrix, right? The concept of taking the red pill.
Exactly. It quietly foreshadows to the audience that she is the character who will eventually wake up to the horrifying underlying reality of the island, while the others remain asleep in the illusion.
It even extends to the minor characters. There is a therapist at the beginning of the movie, played by Kyle MacLachlan. Frida jokingly asks him if she's in danger, and he lowers his glasses and literally blinks twice.
I love that detail.
The clues are screaming at you, but you and the characters are so distracted by the champagne and the swimming pools that you just don't process them.
All of these elements, the flowers, the perfume, the fragmented flashbacks, the coded warnings, they're all cinematic tools used to explore the psychological torment of gaslighting.
Because it's not just lying.
Right. Gaslighting isn't just someone lying to you, it's someone manipulating your environment so thoroughly that you doubt your own sanity. The characters are constantly being told by their hosts that they're having the time of their lives, that they are perfectly safe.
Meanwhile, their bodies, their nervous systems, and their subconscious minds are screaming that something is terribly wrong.
And that sense of wrongness isn't just communicated visually, it is aggressively auditory.
Oh my gosh, yes. The sound design in this movie actively stresses you out. Kravitz was obsessed with the sensory details because, as we discussed, trauma is sensory.
And she used that to her advantage.
Definitely. There's this great detail in our sources about Slater's vape pen. They spent an intense amount of time trying to find the absolute perfect crackling sound for it.
Yeah, they wanted something that sounded like it was popping right inside your lungs. If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is a brilliant use of audio to induce subliminal anxiety.
How so?
Well, high-frequency, unpredictable crackling sounds naturally trigger the brain's amygdala, the fear center. So even when Tatum is just standing there smiling, holding the vape, the audio is telling your nervous system to prepare for a threat.
Wow.
And that physiological anxiety is massively amplified by the film's score. The composer, Chanda Dancy, took a highly unconventional approach to the music.
Yeah, I have to admit, I was a bit confused by this when I first read it in our sources.
Really? Why is that?
Well, I usually think of a movie's score as the emotional undercurrent of the scene. You know, it's supposed to guide me on how to feel sweeping strings for romance, big brass for action. But reading about Dancy's process, it sounds like the music here is actively working against the audience's comfort.
It is entirely adversarial. Dancy didn't score to the picture in a traditional way with neat emotional arcs or melodies.
Okay.
Instead, she created what she called audio textures, dissonant string textures, aggressive wind textures, jarring synthesizers. She handed these over to Kravitz, and they would just drop them into the film at unexpected moments.
It's just, we're random.
Yeah, to, as Dancy bluntly put it, F with people's heads.
And mission accomplished.
Seriously. The final product is essentially the auditory equivalent of dread. Whenever that lizard appears on screen, you don't hear a typical musical sting. You hear this specific, visceral hit of audio that makes your stomach physically drop. The audio acts as a hostile entity.
It's like the sound design mirrors the betrayal of the island itself. The island looks beautiful, but it's fundamentally toxic. The score sounds intriguing at first, but it's designed to unsettle your biology.
And there is a heavy Stanley Kubrick influence in that approach.
Oh, for sure.
Kubrick loved using contradictory sensory information to make audiences uncomfortable. Kravitz utilizes time-skipping edits, where the visual timeline jumps erratically to showcase Frida's mental distress.
Which is a technique very reminiscent of Kubrick's work in A Clockwork Orange.
Exactly. And the chilling reveal of the Polaroid photograph showing Frida was on the island a year ago. Structurally, that is a direct, haunting homage to the famous photograph reveal at the end of The Shining, where you realize the horror has been a lure all along.
It's so stylish, but it leaves you feeling deeply disturbed. And grounding all of this sensory madness is the cast. Naomi Ackie's performance as Frida is so complex.
It really is. Kravitz cast her specifically because the character of Frida has to walk this incredibly ambiguous, difficult line.
Right, because in the script, she's not a perfect innocent victim.
No, not at all. She's manipulative at the start. She actively schemes to get invited to the island.
But she's also utterly unaware of the real danger.
Exactly. And by the end, she becomes potentially a villain herself, as she uses the perfume on Slater to erase his memory and take over his company.
That moral ambiguity is what really elevates the film. The ensemble chemistry is what makes the wild tonal shifts work. You have veteran actors like Christian Slater and Gina Davis.
Alongside performers known for comedy, like Simon Rex and Alia Shawkat.
Right. And they have to balance sharp satirical social commentary with sheer psychological terror. And maintaining that balance behind the scenes during production was a psychological feat in itself.
Oh, absolutely. The actors had to keep the twists a secret, even from themselves in a way, during production.
Yeah, the scenes were rehearsed specifically to maintain ambiguity. They had to film these daytime good times pool parties, laughing and drinking, knowing full well it was a narrative cover-up for the horrific, violent acts occurring at night.
Acts that their characters had been forced to forget.
So what does this all mean? It's almost like listening to a jazz band where everyone is playing in a slightly different time signature. It feels like it should be a total mess, but somehow it forms this terrifying, cohesive harmony.
That's a perfect way to conceptualize the ensemble's dynamic. And sometimes the most terrifying moments came from their spontaneous collaboration on set.
Like the climax.
Yes. During the climax of the film, the illusion has completely shattered. Slater's psychopathy is fully out in the open, and he violently corners Frida. It's a deeply disturbing, twisted scene.
Right.
And right in the middle of this high-stakes moment, Kravitz gave Tatum an improvised piece of direction. She told him to boop Becky's nose.
Which is so unhinged.
It is. And Tatum immediately recognized what she meant. He asked Kravitz, wait, boop like super bad? Referencing his friend Jonah Hill's famous lighthearted comedic boop from that movie.
And Kravitz just calmly said, yeah. Taking this hilarious pop culture moment and dropping it into the middle of a violent thriller is incredibly jarring.
It perfectly encapsulates the sick, twisted nature of Slater King and really the banality of evil in general.
How so?
Well, men like Slater don't see themselves as the villains of a horror movie. They think they're the funny, charming protagonists of a comedy, even while they are systematically destroying the lives around them.
Wow. Yeah.
The boop is terrifying precisely because it is so casual.
Man. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've got memory-wiping perfume, venom antidotes, Kubrickian dread, the weaponization of Channing Tatum's charm, and a tech bro who genuinely thinks forcing people to forget is a gift to them. Where does this leave us?
This raises an important question, I think. It leaves you, the listener, with a deeply uncomfortable thought to mull over. Blinked Twice functions brilliantly as a psychological thriller, but its ultimate goal is to hold a mirror up to our own culture.
Right.
We watch these characters eagerly ignore the red flags because the champagne is expensive and the pool is warm. But what if the real horror of the film isn't that a sinister perfume can erase people's memories?
Then what is it?
What if the true horror is that as a society, we often willingly choose to blink twice? We deliberately look away and forget the horrific transgressions of powerful people, just as long as they keep inviting us to the party.
That is heavy. It really makes you wonder what red flags we are ignoring in our own curated feeds right now. And that wraps our deep dive into Blink Twice. If you enjoyed unraveling this mystery with us, follow Roll Credits and share it with your fellow thriller fans. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and maybe a few more secrets. Stay curious.